The Switch 2 pre-order saga is over. Well, at least for me it is. How's it going, folks? And welcome back to another video here. So, yeah. So my Switch 2 pre-order saga is over. And, yeah. So, but first, though, we gotta go back to the beginning a little bit here. Because otherwise, well, the story I'm about to tell you really wouldn't make any sense. Alright, so we're going to start back at the beginning here. So, as you all remember, Nintendo had their Switch 2 Direct at the beginning of this month, where they fully unveiled the system and showed some games that would be coming to the system within the first several months, with the main highlights, of course, being Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza, which both look really good, by the way. I'd like to point that out. And, yeah, so that happens. And then, immediately afterward, the pre-orders were announced to be starting on April 9th. At least that was the original plan. However, just a few hours later, at some point in the afternoon, Nintendo's like, oh, wait a minute, there's a whole tariff situation going on right now. So they ended up having to pull back on the pre-orders, and at least in the U.S. Well, yeah, that was in the U.S. They had to delay pre-orders. Now, if you lived in, like, Europe or Australia or whatever, pre-orders went live pretty much right away. So those people were able to get it first. For the US and Canada, though, April 9th was the original start date. But, as I just said, the April 9th date ended up getting delayed originally for just the US part of the North American region. The pre-orders for Canada were still set to commence on April 9th. And then, the day before, Nintendo does those people dirty and be like, yeah, so those of you in Canada that were looking forward to pre-order tomorrow, sorry! So what ended up happening was they ended up having to delay the pre-orders up here in Canada as well to align with the timing of the new U.S. date. The new U.S. date ended up being announced on April 18th, the Friday of Easter weekend. And this was also the day after the Mario Kart Direct, which, not gonna lie, was a bit of a downer, but not really gonna get into that. Anyway, so the new date gets announced for April 24th, and I'll be honest, a part of me was kind of hoping that it would have been for the first half of that week rather than the second half of that week, because if it was the first half of that week, i.e. the Tuesday, I would have been able to get my pre-order in. Boom, everything's hunky-dory and easy, right? Well, nothing is ever as easy as it seems. So, and because they chose the second half of the week, which in this case was April 24th, that meant I basically had to wait even longer to try an in-store pre-order. But that doesn't mean I didn't try while I was in the U.S. Oh no, I did try. Believe me, I tried. I tried on Walmart's website, which in the case of Canada is walmart.ca. Target, I did check, but didn't even bother because they don't ship to Canada. Best Buy, it was sold out. And then GameStop's website, well, that was the first thing I tried, was GameStop Canada. And this was on the day that pre-orders opened. And I had a bit of time in between my first and second hockey games of that day, because I was in Boston for a tournament. I go on the GameStop's website, and it said the wait time was going to be 4 hours. And I'm like, what? And with me, obviously, not having the time to wait that long, because my second game of the day was starting pretty soon at that point, I basically had no choice but to log off of that and then come back later. So I go back later, and lo and behold, all the pre-orders online were sold out, which is not surprising. But then here's the best part. A lot of the orders that were made were bots. So GameStop, as a result, both GameStop Nintendo Canada and US divisions had to squash out the bot orders in order to reopen inventory for actual paying customers like myself. So, so that's basically going above and beyond the Call of Duty there. Now, if this happened on I think Walmart probably, I think the other sites probably also did the same thing, canceling bot orders, the duplicate orders, whatever. Now, if this was Amazon, would they have done anything? Absolutely not. And Amazon, apparently in the US, wasn't even allowed to go live with pre-orders, mainly because, well, they have caused Nintendo some problems in the past, over the past year, like repeatedly breaking street dates on first-party releases and all that. So that's probably why Nintendo didn't trust them. Now, if Nintendo had allowed Amazon in the US to go live with pre-orders, they probably would have given them the very strict condition along the lines of, do not break street date with this release or else. I don't think you guys want to know what that or else means. But you should have a general idea anyway. So yeah. Anyway, so I tried all day Thursday, no luck. I kept trying all weekend while down there, also no luck. Now, while Amazon in the US obviously wasn't allowed to have pre-orders, the Amazon websites around the rest of the world, including Canada, did have them, but with a bit of a catch. First off, you had to request an invite by email in order to have a chance to pre-order. And if it was just that, if that was the only requirement, that wouldn't be so bad. But there's a second catch. Also, not only did you have to request an invite, you had to do so while also being an Amazon Prime member, which I think is kind of a BS way of doing things, but but I'm not the one that makes the rules, though. So, anyway, so yeah, that was annoying. Yes, that was annoying. So, an entire weekend goes by, and I have no luck. So then we come to April 28th, which was yesterday, which was the first time when I would have actually been able to attempt an in-store pre-order. And that's what I do. I arrive at a GameStop just after 10 in the morning, all the way on the east end of Toronto, and the purpose of that was mainly because when I had checked the store availability tracker on the website the previous night, it had low availability, so I didn't know if they had like only one or maybe 5. I was hoping they would have had at least 5. I get there, it turns out they only had 1, and I had just missed it by like 5 or 10 minutes. So, that was a bit of a downer. So I end up going back home with nothing, and you would think I ended up with nothing at all in terms of pre-orders yesterday. That's not the case. So then I check later today and find that another location had some available. So I called them up around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and just to confirm, and they did indeed have a few available, according to what the guy told me. And I say to him, all right, well, I can't get up there right this minute because I'm at work. Could you hold one for me? And he's like, no, sorry, we don't do that. So basically that meant having to wait a couple of hours till my shift was over and then going up there and hoping that orders would still be available by the time I got up there. And thankfully, by the time I did get up there, just before 6:30 p.m., they did still have orders left, and I ended up getting one. So, yeah. And I also pre-ordered Street Fighter 6 to go with that. So yay. Now, you would think that the pre-order story would end there, but not necessarily. I mean, it would have ended there, but there's actually a bonus part to this, which was actually earlier this morning. So I go up to the GameStop that I normally go to, which is the one that's closest to my apartment building, and the guy that I'm buddies with over there tells me that they were likely going to have some extra stock of systems on launch day, and that they were also doing a midnight launch. So that's pretty cool. Although he did say he would let me know for sure. And if they do have extras, then maybe I'll just get one from that one because it would be closer to where I am. And it would also allow me to cancel my order at the other store. But again, we'll see what happens. And while I was up there this morning, I also put in my pre-orders for Cyberpunk and Donkey Kong Bonanza for the Switch 2. So, there we go. And as of this point, which is April 29th, there's a little over 5 weeks left until release. 37 days left, I believe, if you include today. So yeah, so that's my Switch 2 pre-order story, and hopefully all of you out there were able to get your pre-orders in as well. But even if you weren't able to get one, then don't worry, because like I said, there's still plenty of time left before the system launches. But if, say, we get to like 2 weeks out, a week out or 2 weeks out, and you still don't have one secured at that point, then then it would be the time to panic, because at that point, you're more than likely not getting in a launch date, and you're probably going to have to wait. You're going to have to wait a little bit longer to get one. Now, of course, with me being a content creator, it's imperative that I have one as soon as possible, in this case on launch day, so that I can bring you as much coverage as possible. Especially because the price that they're charging now may not be the price like a couple of months from now. And that's because the tariffs supposedly are supposed to start up again in July. And that could force Nintendo to raise the price of the Switch 2 at that point. But I don't really want to dive into that too much, because, well, that's something for them to figure out when that time comes. But anyway, that's going to do it. And yeah, so the bag is secured, and I definitely look forward to playing some Mario Kart World for you all on launch weekend, on Switch 2 launch weekend. So yeah, that is it. That is all for right now, and I will see you folks later.